Hello, gumshoes. I'm going to give people a minute to arrive. Oh, we already have a full house. How great is this? Okay, can you guys hear me? I'm just going to wait for confirmation. I really just like to jump in. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, I see. Okay, someone said we're on. Okay, great. All right, so tonight we are going to jump into the Affidavit of Probable Cause for Lori Vallow. This was the affidavit that came out of Chandler. So there was also an Affidavit of Probable Cause for both Lori and Chad that came out of Rexburg, Fremont County. This is the one for Chandler. So when this was released, it was heavily redacted. But when the 1100 page police report was released, one of the things that I did was I just kind of went on a fishing expedition and I wanted to see if I could, if maybe parts of the redacted police report or affidavit were possibly unredacted in the police report. And so what I would do, because I'm an analyst, so I like to disclose my methodology. I would take like a section of text, either right before a redaction or right after it, and search the police report. And I had to run OCR, which is just optical character recognition, on the police report to convert images or screenshots to text, and that's how I was able to find these. And so then what I did was I matched the font in the Affidavit of Probable Cause and superimposed the redacted text on those, those black bars. And much to my surprise, I was able to unredact the entire affidavit of probable cause. And I don't say that in any kind of self-congratulatory way. I was very surprised given the level of redactions in the affidavit that it was left unredacted in the police report. So, so I don't know if that was intentional or like an oversight or what, but I superimposed them on the affidavit, and really more for transparency. I wasn't quite as careful in like making sure everything lined up exactly, because sometimes like it doesn't line up exactly, like depending, like I'm on a Mac and most police departments are on Windows. So sometimes there can be like little variations in like the kerning, that's like the spacing between letters and things like that. But you'll see is very, very close. And it meant like, copying, pasting it in, and figuring out how much probably went in one line, because some, with some of the redactions, it's an entire block. But anyway, so without further ado, we are just going to read through it, and then we can discuss it. We can have like open Q&A, and I may editorialize a little bit because it gets a little dry, but it is, I think, personally, I think it's particularly interesting to see what was originally left redacted. It's almost like getting to peek behind the curtain. But I just want to affirm, like I even just today double checked, like I, went redaction by redaction just to, actually, this was kind of a triple check. And I only found one little, it was like two words didn't have a space and I added a space, but everything else checked out. That doesn't guarantee that everything is 100% on, but like you'll see when you see the text over it, like there's nothing I would have added in. And besides that, I have a lot of integrity. And if there had been something that wasn't included in the police report, I would absolutely disclose that. But literally every single redaction was unredacted in the police report. So, all right, without further ado, I am going to share my screen and we'll just get started. Okay. Testing, testing. Can you guys hear me? Hello? Yes. Okay, great. All right. Some of you need Xanax. Like there's no blood involved. Okay, you can hear me now. Yeah, I just turned the mic off. So hopefully this will work. Okay, great. Okay. All right, so we will start from the top. This has never happened before, but that's okay. We'll just move along. If anything like this happens in the video, I always include links in the description to jump ahead to that section. Okay, so State versus Lori Vallow and State versus Chad Daybell, synopsis. Okay, on 7/11/2019 at 8:32 hours, the Chandler Police Department was called to the address of 5531 South Four Peaks Place in Chandler, reference a shooting. The caller, who identified himself as Alex Cox, indicated that he had shot his brother-in-law, Charles Vallow, in self-defense. As a result, a homicide investigation took place and all pertinent parties to the incident were interviewed. That's actually, I mean, they use the word homicide investigation or words very loosely. I've already addressed that in another live, and they actually did not interview all of the pertinent parties. But the scene was also processed and analyzed based on these interviews. At the conclusion of the investigation on 7/11, there was concern about a potential bullet strike on the ground near Charles Vallow's body. And it wasn't, I'm not trying to be pedantic, but it wasn't just near his body, it was under his body. And it was an indicator that Charles had already been down for the second shot, which Alex had lied about. Again, I talked about that in another live. There was also concern regarding the timeline of events that came to light in the days following the homicide. None of these concerns would immediately provide probable cause for the arrest of anyone present at the time of the murder, and more investigation was necessary. Again, I contend that point in another live. In the weeks following the murder of Charles Vallow, investigators learned that Charles and Lori Vallow were experiencing turmoil in their marriage. As a result, Charles moved Lori into the residence on Four Peaks Place with Lori's daughter, Tylee Ryan, and their adoptive son, JJ Vallow, who was diagnosed with autism. I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit for those of you who are on mobile. Let's see if I can fill the screen. Yeah, okay. Charles Vallow remained in Texas and came into town to visit on 7/10. When looking into the relationship between Lori and Charles, it was learned that Lori had accused Charles of infidelity, which led to their separation. It was also learned that during the uncertainty of their relationship, Lori left JJ with Charles and disappeared for over 2 months. It was also learned that Charles was concerned for Lori's mental health, as she had begun to express that she was selected to prepare 144,000 people for the end of the world. Concerned for her well-being and that of the children, Charles filed a mental health petition asking for a mental health evaluation. In this petition, Charles talked about how Lori had told him that he was possessed by a dark spirit by the name of Ned Schneider. Lori would even refer to Charles in conversation and documentation by the name of Ned. This turmoil in the relationship can be substantiated through police reports, court orders, police body camera footage, cell phone records, and witness testimony. On 10/3, the Chandler Police Department learned of the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. On 10/2, Brandon reported that someone shot at him when he was arriving home while he was exiting his vehicle in front of his Gilbert residence. He indicated that the shot was fired from the back of a Jeep Wrangler parked down the street from his residence. Brandon suspected that the shooter was possibly Alex Cox. Brandon further reported that Lori Vallow was to blame for his impending divorce from his wife, Melanie Boudreau, the niece to Lori. Brandon then provided authorities with insight into the extreme religious beliefs of Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. Brandon suspected that these beliefs led him to lose his wife and also led to the murder of Charles Vallow. While continuing to investigate the murder of Charles Vallow, Kay Woodcock, grandmother of J.J. Vallow, contacted Detective Moffat and was concerned about J.J. She indicated that she had not heard from J.J. and Lori was not allowing him to call or video message her and her husband. It was discovered that Lori had relocated to Rexburg, Idaho with Alex Cox. That was in September. Idaho authorities were asked to conduct a welfare check on J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. During this welfare check in November of 2019, Lori indicated that the kids were staying with Melanie Gibb in Arizona. Again, this isn't true. Lori said that J.J. was staying with Melanie Gibb in Arizona. Investigators contacted Gibb and determined that this was not the case. Again, this also is not true. And it was very frustrating to me to see this lie still being proffered more than a year after Melanie testified under oath that she had lied for Lori and Chad. So, and she didn't correct the lies. She couldn't remember exactly how long it was, but it was 10 or 11 days, she estimated. So anyway, all right. Lori also told another witness that JJ and Tylee went to stay with Kay Woodcock. Again, that was not true. The neighbor said that she said JJ went to stay with Kay Woodcock. This was obviously not the case either. During this time, investigators learned that Lori Vallow had married Chad Daybell, who was a resident of Rexburg, Idaho. Strangely, Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell, died in her sleep on 10/19. So, this was just a couple weeks after Brandon was shot at. Lori and Chad would marry within a month of Tammy's passing. As a result, investigators from the Chandler Police Department, Gilbert Police Department, Rexburg Police Department, Fremont County Sheriff's Office, and the FBI began to coordinate efforts to locate JJ and Tylee and also investigate the respective cases within their jurisdiction. This coordinated effort consisted of numerous search warrants on telephone records, social media accounts, bank records, medical records, email accounts, residences, and seized electronic devices. As a result of the data recovered, it was believed that none of the mentioned crimes were coincidence or justifiable. Specifically to Chandler, the evidence shows that Charles' death was a planned event and necessary to prevent Charles and others from confronting Lori about her extreme religious beliefs when he came to town on 7/11. The death of Charles Vallow was also necessary in order for Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow to marry and fulfill their religious prophecy. Excuse me. You can see we're about to come up on quite a few redactions. You can kind of see the snippets over here. It was discovered that Lori Vallow believed she was an exalted goddess, and she and Chad were directed to lead 144,000 people in preparing for the end of the world. Through this investigation, many witnesses came forward and provided insight into this belief system. Using these interviews and the data gathered from the above-mentioned warrants, several others who shared Lori and Chad's belief system were identified. Those pertinent to the investigation were identified as Melanie Boudreau, Alex Cox, Zulema Pastenis, Summer Shiflett, Lori Vallow, and Chad Daybell. Excuse me. It was discovered that Lori and Chad believed that they had extraordinary abilities. Some of these abilities included the power to teleport and cause harm to others, the ability to call up natural disasters, the ability to pray away demonic spirits, attached to others, and also visionary capabilities. Because of these abilities provided to them, they felt they were qualified to tell whether someone had a light or dark scale associated with them. This scale would indicate whether or not they had demonic spirits attached to them. Lori and Chad would often refer to these dark spirits by actual name by a certain level of spirit, or by using the term zombies. Let me just move this up a little bit. Okay. Lori and Chad also shared a trust level in referring to others. In examining the data, these dark scales were attached to Brandon, Charles, JJ, and Tylee. Many others were also provided with dark and light scales. Coincidentally, if you shared their belief system, your score was favorable. If you offered any opposition to their belief or their destiny, you were seen as possessed. In reviewing the documents collected by the agencies involved, the following would show that Lori and Alex conspired to murder Charles Vallow on 7/11. The first evidence to cause harm to Charles Vallow was discovered in text messages between Zulema Pastanis and Lori Vallow on November 3rd, 2018. Zulema is a friend of Lori Vallow's and also the widow of Alex Cox. Zulema's cellular phone was seized and data extracted by the Gilbert Police Department after the death of her husband, Alex Cox. On November 3rd at 14:40 hours, Zulema tells Lori that she was told by God that she is to protect Lori. In January of 2019, Zulema told Lori that she had a vision she could create storms and fire and will have the eye of the Lord. On February 6th at 16:06 hours, Lori texted Zulema telling her that Charles was blocking her gifts. From this point forward, there is specific conversation to cause harm to Charles Vallow, who has also been referred to as a dark spirit called Hiplos or Ned. The following are text messages observed on Zulema Pastanis' cellular phone. May 3rd at 8:19. Zulema texts, there's some typos in here, but they're Chandler's typos, not mine. Zulema texts Chad Daybell saying she heard a voice saying that someone in Lori's family is going to die. I actually think that text was sent to Lori, unless she also sent it to Chad. But anyway, 5:29, Zulema to Lori. Because Lori replied, "Call me," with like multiple exclamation marks. So if someone reminds me, I'll pull that up in my timeline. May 29th at 10:06 hours, Zulema to Lori, "I will go in spirit when the bomb goes off, and I'll be there to see JJ's spirit to go to the presence of the Lord. Then I and the angels will protect the bodies and not allow for them to be possessed by evil." Later that day, Zulema to Lori, "I encapsulated them with invisible, hidden capsules that will close and capture them as soon as the bomb goes off and they leave the body. I also created a safe path guarded by warrior angels for Jonas to come and bind them and take them away as soon as they exit the body. I have a good feeling of this. I saw myself protecting the bodies." 5:29, 10:32, Lori to Zulema, "Perfect. I found out there are 4. One is a level 4 entity. His name is Hiplos. The H is silent. The other 3 are level 3s. Let's do this." Now, I made this point in another live, but it says in the police report that both Melanie, and it might also be in this affidavit, that both Melanie Gibb and Zulema, this is just me talking, obviously, I'm not reading. Both Melanie Gibb and Zulema said that Chad was the one who came up with the names of these evil spirits. But we saw with Hiplos that Lori was the one who assigned this name. And it was, I think, maybe 2 days after she texted Zulema, she texted Chad. And then there's a record of him Googling Hiplos because he's trying to make sense of what does it mean? And it doesn't mean anything. She just gave it a Cockney accent. But so I will circle back on this point when I talk about who the mastermind was. But okay. May 30th at 18 hours. Lori to Zulema. I would love it, but I'm out of town. I'm not going to the conference. I think this was the conference in Salt Lake City, but thought it was important to my friendship with Melanie to go to Utah with her. I'm hoping to have a reason soon to go back to Texas, working on that now. I'm told he, like meaning Hiplos, can't stay in there for more than 5 days. So she's thinking like Charles' death was going to be imminent. And she was kind of like hiding out and avoiding going back to Texas, thinking that they were going to be able to murder him with their powers. So it has been 2, she was saying. It was 2 days at that point. I'm told our time bomb is in effect and it's only a matter of time and circumstance. 5:30 at 17:01 hours. Zulema to Lori. I have a feeling that you will have a reason to go back very soon, meaning to Texas. I am continuing to send storms of fire, fire lightning, fireballs, the light of Christ, and the light of Heavenly Father as our biggest weapons against them. Soon, very soon. 6:01 at 14:33 hours. Zulema to Chad Daybell. I just did some work on Hiplos, so she didn't have the spelling down. I'm holding this intention and asking for the Lord to complete it. Later that day, Chad to Zulema. Lori texted me about what Julie Clement saw about Hiplos looking like a dragon. Frightening but fascinating. The next day, Charles sent Lori numerous messages, some of which were very amicable between the two of them. In one message, Charles professed his dedication to Lori and their relationship. Charles was driving on June 2nd and taking JJ to the beach in Galveston, Texas. This trip was supported by photos of JJ at the beach as well as GPS data attached to these photographs. Later that day, Lori to Zulema. Yes, it does. Let's put some fire energy towards Hiplos now. He is driving now, and today is the day. You and I can do it spiritually. Let's go to him and hover over the truck till we do it. Are you ready? This attempt at causing harm to Charles would have been when JJ was in the vehicle as well. The next minute, Zulema to Lori, I'm ready. The next minute, Lori to Zulema, let's go now. A few minutes later, Zulema to Lori, that is powerful. I'm still sending fire. And then this just goes back and forth. This is all of this is just within minutes. Lori to Zulema, yes, it is. I'm blinding him with light. Zulema to Lori, oh, that's awesome. Lori to Zulema, I'm feeling it big time. Raphael is with us. And there is an argument that Raphael is Chad Daybell. And there was a Raphael that was assigned a 100% trust rating in one of Chad's weird lists. Zulema to Lori, I feel him. I'm sure that did not go over well with Lori. But Lori to Zulema, did he leave? Zulema to Lori, I can't see him. I felt like I was chasing him because I saw me running after someone. Lori to Zulema, get him. Zulema to Lori, oh, I'm chasing. Lori to Zulema, you are amazing, lady. I love you. And when you see multiple question marks like that, is actually, they were emojis. I've seen that elsewhere, just comparing different sources. So when they bring the some of these text messages into some of their software, it converts emojis into question marks. Zulema to Lori, I'm tired now, LOL. Lori to Zulema, me too. I'll keep the light and fire going till he's gone. Zulema to Lori, me too. I'm still sending it. And then the next day is the next morning. Lori to Zulema, just feeling completely defeated. Okay, I listened last night, prayed over it, and surrendered. Flying home today to something, the literal demon. He is still fine as of this morning. I love you for being so diligent and wise. Through these text messages between Lori and Charles that were seen on Charles' phone, Lori would return to Texas on 6/3/2019. Later that night, Lori to Zulema, just got home and got JJ to sleep. Let's go spiritually tonight and work on him. We give the timing to the Lord, but we don't need to relent. This is war. Zulema to Lori. This is a couple weeks later. Oh, and can you meet me at the temple in the morning? I have time tomorrow and we can work on Hiplos. Looking into Lori's web history using her Lori for Style at iCloud.com account, I saw that a web search was conducted on 6/21 for Social Security disability. Now, keep in mind, this is several weeks before Charles was shot and killed. Utilizing the URL attached to this web search, it took me to a Social Security disability application. The form allowed you to enter the applicant's information to be able to obtain a free benefits evaluation. This search is of importance as it would indicate an inquiry as to the benefits that Lori would be entitled to. In a text message that Lori sent to Chad Daybell on 7/18, 1 week after Charles was murdered, she indicated the following. So I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. So it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me to who, of course, but it's done. I'll still get the $4,000 a month from Social Security. Lori would not have known this without completing the online benefit evaluation. Furthermore, the Social Security Administration did not have any contact with Lori until she attended an appointment with them on August 12th at 13:30 hours. This appointment was located in Lori's iCloud account. It was at this time that Lori was provided with the actual amount of the benefit, which was close to the $4,000 she reported to Chad in July. On June 22nd, Alex Cox entered the conversation regarding Hiplos or Charles Vallow. Excuse me. Alex started to text Zulema from, this was his phone number. Please do not text or call this number. Through a search warrant, this number was identified as belonging to Alex Cox. On 6/22/2019 at 19:02 hours, Alex sent Zulema a message. Hey, Zulema, it's Alex. And I made the point in another line that this was their first contact, like over text. And we know that because Zulema asked Lori, Zulema told Lori she didn't have Alex's number. And Lori said that she would pass Zulema's number to Alex. Excuse me. So this was just a few months before they married. Okay, so 6/27 at 10:18, Zulema to Lori, do you think there is a way to change Hiplos to the light? On 6/29, Charles Vallow discovered a fictitious letter that Lori sent to kkwalker75@yahoo.com. This letter was written as if it was from Charles Vallow asking Chad Daybell to come to Arizona to assist him with writing a book. This discovery would send everything into action. Charles confronted Lori about the fictitious letter, accusing her of writing the letter so Chad Daybell could provide a reason to his wife to come to Arizona to visit Lori. Charles asked Lori to come clean about her relationship with Chad Daybell by the end of the day, or he would contact Tamara Daybell and inform her of the relationship. I went into depth about that in the video about who was the mole. Following the discovery of this letter, Charles Vallow began talking to Adam Cox, Lori and Alex's brother, about his discovery as well as Lori's radical beliefs. The two then communicated with each other to plan an intervention on or around 7/10. Charles had arranged to come to Arizona and also arranged travel for Adam Cox. During this time, Zulema, Lori, and Chad continued to message about Charles, aka Hiplos. 7/2 at 1952, Zulema to Lori. Also, I was given instructions today to rip, tear, or burn the aura of Hiplos to let the body energy out so he can't re-enter. A little bit later, Chad to Zulema. I am very happy to find out these estates. You and Lolo have been doing amazing work. Mother Earth is so grateful to you both. Thank you as well for your help with Hiplos. He is so very close. He also said the same thing about Tammy just a few months later. On 7/8 at 13:22, Lori to Zulema. Ask if we can call up a California earthquake for tomorrow. So on 7/9, we know from the police report that Charles was in LA, in Los Angeles. So she was trying to have Zulema call up a California earthquake. Hiplos will be heading there tomorrow in Valencia. Sadly, he is still okay, but we are going to continue to work on him. The elements will obey eventually. Excuse me. 7/8, just a few hours later, Zulema to Lori. I had to get home so I could go in my portal out there. I asked, if we do that, the ramifications of the things to come, we are not ready for at this time. For what I understand is that when Hiplos goes, things are going to be a domino effect, one after another. What do we need to do to be ready for all that is coming? So, I mean, this makes it abundantly clear that Zulema was, or at least it strongly suggests that Zulema knew the plans. She knew the plans for Tylee and JJ and who knows who else. Excuse me. And we also know that leading up to this, like she and those other ladies met up with Lori in March. They had many of these prayer circles. They're now all trying to backpedal and say that it was to cast out evil spirits. But we know from Melanie Gibbs' own words, as well as what Ian Pulowski codified, that once someone was overtaken by an evil spirit, there was no casting that out. They became a zombie, and their only redemption was for the body to pass so that they could move on to their next probation, unless they were presumably unless they were marked as sealed away like Joe was. And given how dark of a spirit assignment Tylee had been assigned, it's probably safe to assume that they assumed that she was also marked as sealed away. But okay. So the next day, Lori to Zulema. I feel we are ready, just doing the things we are asked daily as our powers increase and our vibration increases. later that night, now keep in mind, 7/9, that's when Lori had told Melanie Gibb that she couldn't come over because her whole family was there with all of the kids, so that it was chaos. And then Melanie Gibb went anyway and sat outside her house until she let her in. So I'm just trying to provide like the backdrop, because this, affidavit of probable cause isn't going to necessarily provide some of those things, and especially when it comes to Melanie Gibb. Excuse me. Okay, Zulema to Lori. Okay, then it was my fear that things will roll out way fast from now on. Few minutes later, Lori to Zulema. No, that's true, but it's also good. So Lori's making the point, oh no, it's definitely going to roll out fast, but that's a good thing. There is no obvious communication found between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell to show that he was directly involved with the planning of Charles Vallow's murder. Lori Vallow found out about Adam coming to town through her mother and Summer Shiflett. Lori found out about the potential intervention on 7/9. So this was when all the family was over, and she reached out to Melanie and stuff. Excuse me. She reached out to Alex Cox, Melanie Boudreau, and Summer Shiflett to warn them of the elaborate plan that Adam and Charles had. Adam and his son Zach were picked up at the airport on 7/10 by Adam's mother. Excuse me. That also is not accurate. Zach already lived in town. He lived with the Boudreaux. Okay. Summer provided Lori with updates regarding Adam's whereabouts and asked Lori if she wanted to run interference. In other words, Summer asked Lori if Lori wanted Summer to run interference. Lori told Summer that she was trying to figure it out. Summer commented, "I will kill him myself if that is the case." Multiple exclamation marks. Lori responded, "No, I need you safe." There is no indication who Summer was talking about killing. Okay, but I think there was. In text messages found on the Lolly Time iCloud, Summer asked Lori if she wanted to have their mother do a preemptive strike and confront Adam. Well, one note about Lolly Time. So that had been left unredacted in the police report, obviously, even before this. And there was another reference elsewhere in these FOIA docs that it was a list of people who were protecting Lori, and several of them had already died. And one was Laura Cox, who was the Cox's baby, who had died before Lori was born. So they lost Laura, and then Lori was born, sometime after that. But in parentheses, Lori or Chad had put in parentheses next to Laura's name, Lolly. So it looks like the family's nickname for Laura was Lolly, which is really unusual because they also, they named Lori such a close name to Laura, and I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that then Lori's nickname was Lolo, so it's like you have Lolly and then Lolo. So I think that when she created this secondary account, so this was her, quote unquote burner phone. This was the phone that she set up after Charles found the communication, and so I just think it's interesting that Lori called it this. Anyway, all right. Summer told their mother no and asked that she just collect information. Based on the text messages that were located, it was apparent that they were trying to keep Adam away from Alex and come up with a plan of their own. It is also interesting, I'll add as an aside, that in the Gilbert police report, it talked about how the only people, it is some reference, I think I referred to it maybe in my last live, but the only two people who Melanie regularly interacted with after Brandon was shot at was Lori and Lori's mom, Janice. So Janice is pretty intertwined throughout this story. Lori told her sister that she was headed to Alex's house on 7/10 at 15:58 hours. During this time, she continued to message Charles and never once confronted him about her knowing that something was planned. Lori reached out to Melanie Boudreau and convinced her to cancel a trip to Utah for a wedding, telling her, "You can't go at all. We both need to stay here to defend ourselves." Lori added, "Is coming to a head. This week will change everything." Lori would also tell Alex, "Getting sleepy, so I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple of days. Mel, too. She can't go to Utah. They are," she meant planning, "some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way, so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and secure it. Lots to do. Thanks for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you." On 7/11 at 7:35 hours, Charles Vallow arrived at 5531 South Four Peaks Place to pick up JJ. When he arrived, he texted Adam Cox, telling him that Alex was there. Adam told Charles that they were planning something, and Charles stated absolutely. Adam indicated that he was supposed to spend the night with Alex, but Lori probably blocked this. Following the murder of Charles Vallow, Lori took his rental vehicle and cellular phone. The GPS data associated with the phone indicated that the phone left the residence at 07:49 hours. Lori then went to Burger King to get food for JJ, Walgreens to get flip-flops for her and Tylee, and finally returned home at 8:48 hours. Excuse me. Alex Cox would not call 911 until 8:32 hours to report the shooting. When reporting the incident, Alex indicated that it had just happened. He was provided with CPR instructions, and he acted as if he was performing life-saving measures on Charles. It was not until emergency personnel began life-saving measures that they saw blood coming from Charles' body. This would indicate that Alex performed no emergency aid. Based on this timeline, Charles Daybell, this was a typo, excuse me, would have laid dead or dying for approximately 43 minutes before Alex called 911. During this time, phone records indicated that Alex called Lori, and this was another thing, I should say, that Alex also lied to police about, because he had told Detective Moffat that he didn't make any calls, and he actually called Lori twice. And in the last live, not the Q&A, but the one before, where I retraced Lori's movement that day, the day of the shooting, based on the GPS records from Charles' phone, a lot of this was confirmed. And you could actually see on that map, and I created a custom map and I shared it. So if you go to that video and you look in the description, you'll see a link to that map. So you'll see where Lori was both times that Alex called. And the first time she was at the Burger King, and the second time she was at, I think, an intersection just due north. Another thing that I learned from a commenter since I did that live is that, I made a pretty serious point about this medical complex that Lori went to after Chandler Police called Alex and Lori asking them to come back to the house. So we know that Lori was hanging out at Alex's house. And then they get this call from Chandler asking them to come back to the house. But before they went to the house, they went to this medical complex just south of where Alex was living. And I found out from this commenter that Summer's husband is a chiropractor. That I knew, but his office is in that complex that Lori and Alex stopped by. So I strongly suspect that they dumped something in that complex, because I showed using Google Earth, you could see, the dumpsters there. Okay, Lori, Tylee, and Alex told investigators about a physical altercation that was started by Charles. During this altercation, Lori left the residence with Tylee and JJ. As they were leaving, Tylee and Lori reported hearing a gunshot. Based on this investigation, it had been proven how valuable that Alex Cox was to Lori. His mission on this earth was to protect his sister. So this part was redacted. After hearing the shot, Lori fled the residence and never thought to check to see if Alex could have been the victim of a gunshot wound. Nor did Lori call the police to report the incident. These actions would indicate that she knew what was going to take place. And I believe that, personally, that Charles was shot as soon as he walked in the house. I do not, for what it's worth, I do not believe that there was an altercation. After hearing the shot, Lori fled the shot into Charles' body as he laid on the floor, and the delay in calling 911 would also validate their desire for him to die. In addition, Lori told police that Alex was asked to stay at her house to protect her from Charles when he arrived on 7/11. Alex denied this and stated that he had stayed at the house because they were going to go to a water park or go shooting. Found in the room where Alex slept was a plastic garbage bag with men's clothing and an orange zipper bag containing a gun and a .45 caliber handgun. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that everything that they are stating here, like finding out that Charles was already on the floor, finding out that Alex had lied about making phone calls, and finding out that he had called Lori twice, even going to like the Walgreens to find out what they had bought. All of that happened within a week of the shooting. And they didn't move to Idaho for a month and a half. So just throwing that out there. As part of this investigation, Alex performed a walkthrough for investigators. Now, they had wanted Alex and Lori to do this walkthrough. That's why they were both called back to the house. But Lori comes to the house and she's like, "Oh, sorry, I have to go pick up JJ." And they're just like, "Oh, okay." So, I mean, it's really just ridiculous. But anyway, Alex indicated that as Charles was coming at him, he shot him twice in the chest while Charles was standing. Trajectory at autopsy discovered that one of these shots would be consistent with this statement. This shot would have gone through Charles and ended up in the baseboard. I made a case for I do not believe that the shot that was in the baseboard had gone through Charles. You can watch that video if you're so inclined. Again, you can look in the description, whether you're on mobile or desktop. If you open up the description and there's like a little chevron, a little down facing arrow you can tap on if you're on mobile to get to the description so that you can move ahead to that. But that there was no blood spatter, there was no blood anywhere where the bullet hit the baseboard, and the trajectory was off, and that shot would have, I believe that shot tore through. I think that shot went through Charles' heart, and possibly some bone. Anyway, you can go through that. It just doesn't make sense. And then the second round, that was, or bullet, that was just sitting in the middle of the floor, chilling. I think that had no blood, and it doesn't even look like it was spent. In other words, it doesn't look like it was fired from a gun. But anyway, okay. This shot would have gone through Charles and ended up in the baseboard. However, the second shot entered below Charles' rib cage and exited through his upper left shoulder, causing a shored wound and defect in the flooring where Charles was found. This angle would indicate that Charles was already laying on the floor when the second shot was fired. So here, they're saying trajectory at autopsy discovered this, but they actually knew the day up. They knew as soon as they moved Charles' body that he had been down for the second shot because of the scoring in the floorboard, and they removed the floorboard. There is no indicator in the police report if they even confronted Alex about this lie, because they knew before Alex came back to the house, because there's a description about how they cleaned up the blood so that it wouldn't be traumatizing for them when they walked them through the events of that day. And it was when they cleaned up the blood, that's when they realized the scarring in the floor. So they knew the day of, and they knew before Alex and Lori came back to the house that Alex had lied about a very critical point. And in the state of Arizona, it's not a stand your ground state. And if you can get to safety and you're no longer in danger, then homicide isn't justifiable. And I already talked about that. Like, Alex already had shown that by going back to the room, not calling police, not staying in the room, barricading himself in the room, this homicide was not justifiable according to Arizona law, from what I can tell. Anyway, okay. After the murder of Charles Vallow, additional text messages and emails were located that would indicate the murder was intentional and according to a master plan. One of these was a message sent to Lori from Chad Daybell. The message read, "I got the inspiration to go back to my original death percentages that helped us track Charles, Ned, etc. Tammy is very close. Her percentage has fallen steadily since Hiplos left. It is encouraging." All right. Messages on Zulema's phone would also show the intentionality of the murder of Charles Vallow. This was 7/11, just before midnight. Zulema to Lori, "As I was working on Hiplos today." So keep in mind, Charles had already been shot. And she said, "As I was working on Hiplos today in the temple, I was told, quote, he will be taken as he is. I don't know what that means. Then I was shown to only put light, the brightest light, from the top and the bottom at the same time, meeting in the middle. So I've been doing that all day." The next day, 22:36, Zulema to Julie Clement. "Oh, okay. Hiplos is gone. It was a Nephi and Laban ending. I will tell you more when I see you in person or when you see Lori in person. I'm leaving for Chile on Monday for 2 weeks." And sometime after that, Zulema to Julie, right? So we don't know what Julie said to her. But then Zulema said, "I'm just happy it's over." According to Mormon doctrine, Nephi is a prophet in the Book of Mormon and is commanded by his father, Lehi, to return to Jerusalem to obtain brass plates that contain genealogy records from Laban. Nephi and his two brothers, Laman and Lemuel, returned to Jerusalem. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these names correctly, but Laman attempts to get the plates from Laban. He is chased off in fear of his life, as Laban says he will slay him. They later return to Laban with all their valuables and are chased off again. Nephi later goes to Laban's house and finds him passed out drunk. Nephi is commanded to slay Laban as he was delivered into Nephi's hands. Nephi uses Laban's sword to kill Laban. The story can be found in the Book of Mormon, 1 Nephi chapters 3 and 4. Through interviews conducted with Melanie Gibb and Zulema Pastenis, the belief system regarding dark spirits and zombies was revealed. Both witnesses were in direct communication with Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell and were provided instructions regarding their missions to prepare for the second coming of Christ. Both indicated that they were told long before 7/11 that Charles had died and his body was taken over by an evil spirit. And this is exactly why when they talk about these prayer circles, they are lying. These prayer circles were not unto life, so to speak. They were unto death. Like, they believed that when they were overtaken by these evil spirits and became zombies, they were gone. Like, they had died and they were taken over by an evil spirit. Anyway, but it's important because this revisionist history, I think, is intended to make these prayer circles seem less onerous, but onerous they were. Both witnesses gathered with Lori Vallow prior to 7/11 to try and pray the spirits out of his body so Charles' spirit would no longer be in limbo. Evidence shows that the names and timing of these spirits coincided with searches for these names on Chad Daybell's Google account. And that is true to an extent, but like I said, his search for Hiplas was done after Lori had already assigned him that evil spirit. So I think that there's a little bit of an agenda, not that I'm trying to defend Chad in any way, but it does seem like her friends are kind of, circling the wagons around Lori, and of course, so is, many of the members of the Cox family, to try to put this all on Chad, but I think they share equal responsibility. When Lori found out about Charles and Adam, it wasn't the best writer, about Charles and Adam were coming to town, she believed that they were going to kill her for her life insurance money. On 7/9, Lori reached out to Melanie Boudreau for help. Lori told Melanie in a text message that she needed to speak with her ASAP. Melanie replied, and Lori indicated she was on the phone trying to figure out what to do. Evidence shows that Lori was talking to Chad Daybell. Lori then asked for the assistance of Melanie Boudreau, they misspelled Boudreau, and Alex Cox to stand by her side for protection. Excuse me. Now, one thing I'm going to stop and just address here is that Lori also, according to the police report and also the infamous Reddit email, Melanie Gibb stayed at Lori's house on July 9th. And the next day, Lori told Melanie that she needed to leave because Charles was going to kill her. So for Melanie Gibb to claim that she didn't know that Charles had been killed for 4 days is pretty outlandish, because she's supposed to be one of Lori's best friends, and law enforcement does consistently protect Melanie throughout these police reports, even going so far as to at times referring to her by her last name only and redacting it, which makes it harder to search for her name in these documents. So, but for Melanie Gibb to claim that she didn't know for 4 days because she doesn't watch the news is preposterous, because according to her own story, she left because Lori said Charles was going to kill her. So why wouldn't Melanie Gibb have checked on her friend to make sure that she wasn't shot? So anyway, okay. This was when Lori made the comment about being told she was going to be like Nephi. After the murder of Charles Vallow, Chad Daybell not only searched for articles linked to his death, but he also placed a call to the mortuary where Charles was to be taken to inquire into cremation services. During this phone call, Chad Daybell used a family member's name, but providing information that would suggest he was calling about Charles. So, I mean, he referred to himself as what was it? Chad DeBall. I think it was like DABAL. It's ridiculous. Melanie Gibb and Zulema Pastenis have both included that Lori got her advice and direction from Chad Daybell. When given instructions, Zulema stated that Lori would always say, "I have been told." Messages identified above have indicated that Chad Daybell was aware of the work with zombies and specifically the work that Zulema and Lori were doing on Charles prior to 7/11. Now, another thing I'll throw out here is that they kind of make it sound like Chad was solely responsible for, doling out like these trust ratings and these light and dark ratings. But it says in these police reports that people such as Melanie Gibb, Melanie Pulowski, Zulema, and others were also asking Lori for light and dark ratings for different people, like family members, people they dated and things like that. Okay, based on the above synopsis and a myriad of other facts gathered in this case, it is recommended that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell be charged with conspiracy to commit murder for the death of her husband, Charles Vallow, on 7/11. And the prosecutor's office chose not to pursue charges with Chad Daybell. And I mentioned this early on, but it was ridiculous that that Chandler Police recommended that Chad Daybell also be charged while explicitly stating that they could not find evidence that he was involved in the planning of the deaths. So anyway, if you want to download the copy of the unredacted affidavit, you can go to bit.ly/CPD for Chandler Police Department -LB. All right. And that concludes the reading. So now we'll just open it up for questions. If you have a question, I highly recommend putting the word question in all caps. That just helps it to stand out more when I'm scanning for questions. It also helps to keep your question short. If it's a paragraph, I'm just not going to be able to read it. So there's less of a chance that I'm going to answer your question. So, all right. Kim Schmidt, who I call Eagle Eyes, asked, Chad's call to the mortuary is curious to me why Lori could have called. There is a consistent pattern. Of course, I can't say for sure. I don't know. But there is a consistent pattern of Lori having other people get their hands dirty. So I think also she would have been concerned that they would recognize her voice because she would actually have to interact with them. I mean, she didn't even tell Charles' family that he was dead until she had all of the cremation plans already locked down. And so yeah, I think he was actually even cremated before quite a few of the family members knew that he had passed. Okay. Yeah, Anna said if Lori really had $2 million life insurance on her life, why did the money grabbers, Alex, Chad, not kill her? There has never been verification that there was $2 million on Lori's life. So that may be true, but that hasn't been verified in any of the FOIA docs that have come forward. Now, of course, I've talked about this in other lives. We're not going to get FOIA docs out of Idaho until after the trials. So, yeah, that hasn't been verified. Another thing that was interesting to me, at least, is there have been multiple references of Brandon having a $1 million life insurance policy. But according to the FOIA doc, it was significantly less than that. And I talked about it, I think, it was in one of the more recent lives, but I forget the amount, but I think it might have been like 300,000. Anyway, so unless there was another plan, the FOIA doc said like the total of everything, like the life insurance and the money that she got from the businesses that they owned because he bought out her shares, and their home, like all of it totaled up to $1 million. Okay. Someone asked, didn't Colby say Tylee was at the pool party when he showed up? Yes. He said that she was crying, but he went to the back and talked to his mom. Oh, thank you, TC Babos. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Thank you. It's kind words. Okay. Yeah, Mel, Charles homicide. There's just no way you can call this a justifiable homicide because Alex was able to get to safety. And, a gun trumps a baseball bat. Besides that, I mean, just common sense. Like, right, he's going to come back. First of all, Charles is just going to hang out, like waiting for Alex to come back with a gun. I mean, there were just so many issues. And I talked about this in a couple of different lives, but there was a really critical piece that Detective Yinklin missed when she asked Lori about Charles' phone, and Lori said that she found it in his car when she took off with his car. I mean, that's already an issue there. But then she said that, she found it in Charles' car, but the entire supposed cause of this fight was that they were fighting over his phone. So the only way it could have been in his car would have been for someone to carry it out of the house and into his car. But, and she's like, oh, we just, found it. And no one caught that, which is just unbelievable to me. It just, yeah. Anyway. All right. Barbara asked, what are the ages of Lori's siblings? I don't know all their current ages. I think Lori's like right around 48 now. So Summer's younger. Adam is older. So Adam was older than Alex also. And I think Alex would have been, I think, around 53 now. So, okay. Yeah, yeah. Carol said law enforcement didn't mention the boo boo on Alex's noggin. Yeah, not in the affidavit of probable cause. Cynthia asked, do you think they planned on claiming they were simply following their religious beliefs if they ever got caught? That's a great question. I actually do not think that they were ever planning to do that. Uh, I think that, according to one of the FOIA docs, Lori thought that there was going to be a massive earthquake in Salt Lake City, and that people would be so distracted by this earthquake they wouldn't notice that the kids were missing, and so I think she just kind of banked on always having an explanation for everything. But I do wonder now if they're going to try to make a case for Lori being, schizophrenic or something like that. If now they'll try to like shape shift her a bit and make it sound like, she had these religious delusions so that she's not held as accountable for her role in these murders. So, but pure conjecture. But at the time of the murders, you see, and I've talked about, having had interactions with someone who was schizophrenic, throughout my life. There are religious delusions, but the difference between my biological mother, who is schizophrenic, and Lori is that my mother, she believed her delusions, and so she wouldn't have felt like she needed to cover them up because she believed them, like, but with Lori, you see consistently she's sneaky, she's covering things up. And I made this point in another live, but I think it's really key that the piece that Zach Cox shared, that Lori had gotten angry at Alex because he told a bishop that Lori had seen Jesus, and I think also talked to him. Lori got angry at Alex for telling the bishop that, and I thought, like, no, that is not the mark. No, I have no training. My experience with schizophrenia is limited to one person, so one person does not a disease or a pattern make. But having said that, that's just not consistent with what I have seen. Someone who is actually schizophrenic. So yeah, so regardless of what depression and psychosis she might be dealing with now, she had the ability to blend. She had the ability to talk her way out of things. And if you are covering up your tracks, then they're wrong. You know the difference between right and wrong. So, all right. Excuse me. Crafty Cottage creates. Oh, whoop, it just advanced. Asked, do you think Lori's family still believes that Alex died of natural causes? And thank you for the kind words. I suspect that I strongly suspect that they know that something shady went down because Janice Cox made the point in one of her interviews that they had to find out that Alex died from police. So that was an indictment against Lori and Zulema. Because she also said that, now who knows? I mean, these Cox family members aren't known for their integrity. So at times it's hard to know who's lying about what because everyone lies. But excuse me. But yeah, so she said that they had to find out that Alex died from police and that she didn't know that Alex had even gotten married. So yeah, I suspect that they know something is up. And I've heard from two different people that, and I mean, this is unconfirmed, but that Barry and Janice don't even want to talk about Lori. So it doesn't sound like within their circle that excuse me, I think they're going to like publicly stand by Lori, but I would be very surprised if they even show up for Lori's trial. Okay. Yeah, so Crochet, some of these names are so funny. Crocheting Bammy asked, do you think they truly believed what they were doing was righteous? I don't. Because if you truly believe that what you're doing is righteous, you don't hide. And so, yeah, no, I don't. I think Lori and Chad both absolutely knew what they were doing was wrong. But I think having this crowd around them, like supporting them, kowtowing to them, yeah, just supporting these delusions enabled them to a staggering degree. And it really goes back to even after Joe was found dead. Yeah, I've talked about this before, but the fact that she went to Hawaii after he was found dead, which is a consistent pattern, not just for Lori, but for other Cox family members as well, according to Steve Cope, who was Stacy's husband and Melanie Boudreaux, or now Pulaski's father, that the family had gone to Hawaii on vacation when Stacy died, and Alex was the only one left behind with Stacy. So, but here you have Lori's friends who none of them came forward. Like when the kids were missing, they certainly didn't go to police after Joe died, but here Lori was openly talking to them about paying Alex to murder Joe, and and they just let it go. And one of them said, like, that's just what Lori does. Lori says crazy things. And I'm just like, no, this is not a case of woulda, coulda, shoulda. Like, this was a man who was found dead after weeks of, he just, there was no one around. And then Lori goes to Hawaii and it's like, hey, I paid my brother to murder Joe. And, one of them now has tried to say, oh, she was talking about 2007. Let's suspend reality for a moment and say that's true. And I made the point in another live, Lori doesn't brag about her failures. She brags about her successes. That's why I personally do not believe she was talking about 2007. I think she was talking about 2018. But even so, the fact that she's saying something like this, about a man who was already dead. Like all kinds of alarm bells should have gone off. So Lori just surrounded herself with people who wouldn't challenge her. And you see, anytime someone started to ask questions, then they were cut off. So I think, Lori just kind of brought the party. She brought a lot of energy, and I think it just seemed like people didn't want to get cut off. And now they're distancing themselves. And I do think that Lori did legitimately cut off some of these people, because you can tell by their reduced trust ratings that Lori and Chad had both been, kind of, you know, um, whittling down this list of trusted people. But yeah, they all enabled her in different ways. Okay. Oh, okay. B Bunny Bailey asked, do you think that the original plan was for JJ to pass away with Charles in the truck? Absolutely. Yeah, I think I appreciated that law enforcement made that point, that, when they, like, I do think that they legitimately thought that they could murder people with their powers. And if you think about it, even after all of this, like, came to light, here you have Melanie Gibb, who went on Dateline and actually said that she was surprised that Charles was shot, because she thought that they were just going to say a prayer, and his spirit would leave his body and he would just die. And then she said, if he really was a zombie. And like, Keith's face, he just has this look of horror. Like, did you really just say that out loud? And so they absolutely believed that they had the power to murder people with their prayers. And Melanie Gibb also said the same thing when she was being interviewed by Rexburg Police in Phoenix. I think they were in Chandler or Gilbert. They were in their police department, but it was Rexburg Police. Let's see, Lieutenant Ball and Detective Hermosillo were interviewing her, and she did say that yes, the purpose of these prayers was death. So, so yes, I do think that Lori thought that they would perish in this accident. And according to April Raymond, when she was living in Hawaii, and Lori was back and forth between Hawaii, Idaho, Texas, she was just kind of all over the place. She said on Dateline that Lori had originally told her that Charles was dead, and that then she updated it to, well, he wasn't dead yet, but she expected to get a call any day that he had died, and that Lori thought he was going to die in a car accident. So but there's no indicator that she reached out to Charles. Okay. Okay, Nancy Ellen asked, much of redacted material has to do with Zulema's involvement. Is that because she has immunity in exchange for testimony, and they are trying to protect her from influence by Lori or Chad? Yes, so her information was released much more so than anyone else's, and I believe that it is because she has, I think it's called limited use immunity. So not full immunity. I think if it's shown that she lied in her testimony, she will lose that immunity. But yeah, I think that's why so much was released from her text messages. Excuse me. So yeah. That's correct, Brenda. Alex wasn't ever arrested. And Gilbert police had their eyes on him just days before his death. I also suspect there's this really strange reference when I was going through the list of evidence that was admitted. one of the pieces of evidence was 3 trash cans, and there were pictures taken of the trash in the trash cans, and then there was a turquoise brush that was actually admitted into evidence. There's no mention of where these, I think they called it like domestic or household trash cans, had come from. So I actually don't think that they were trash cans. They could have been, but it sounds more, because there's no reference to additional warrants, and I didn't see any redactions that look like in the list of warrants. I don't remember seeing anything that looked like it was like a fully redacted reference to a warrant, possibly. But that to me indicates that they may have picked up someone's trash that was out on the curb, because they don't need a warrant for that. So I think these would have been potentially trash bags and not the actual trash cans. But I have wondered if these trash bags came from Zulema and Alex's. Okay, I'll see if there are a couple more questions, and then we will head out. Um, okay, so Jean Helmick asked, can you explain the Reddit email? It's Reddit. So there was this email that was published on an LDS site. I'm sorry, no, an LDS subreddit on reddit.com. It's reddit.com. And then the email was deleted, but someone else took a screenshot of this email, excuse me, before it was deleted. And then that was republished. And it was, excuse me, it was really interesting because this was very early on in the case, when, there, I think at this point, like there were no FOIA docs or anything like that. And as more and more information was released, it did become abundantly clear that whoever wrote this document had insider information, because there were things that didn't come out until months later. And so when I refer to the Reddit email, that's what I'm talking about. And I think, yeah, I created a bit.ly link for it. Let me see if I can find it, where you would be able to see it. Now, the formatting is just horrible, because when it was released, it just didn't, whoever released it, it was like probably on like mobile or something. So it's not really easy to read, but let's see. Okay. I think I have a bit.ly link about it. Um, yeah, I'll have to look for it. Because I know that I have it. Let me just search one more thing. But yeah, there's quite a bit of information. Even the fact that like Melanie Gibb had stayed at Lori's, and yeah, quite a bit. Let's see. I found it. I'm not sure. I think YouTube will let me post this. Let me see if it shows up the link. It did. Okay. Great. So there you go. All right. Do you think it is police incompetence or something else? Oh, I think there's a tremendous amount of I I don't know if it was incompetence or just yeah, I mean cutting a horrific number of corners. So you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Like, is there pressure to close cases? I just don't know. But yeah, it the astounding thing to me was just how much Chandler Police knew uh, in that first week following the shooting of Charles. And yeah, like Alex and Lori weren't even brought in for more questions. There's no record that Melanie, I don't think Melanie Boudreau was ever interviewed. Um, there's no record that like Lori's mother was interviewed. And so, yeah, there's also no record that they had retraced Lori's steps the day of the shooting, because um, they didn't even order Charles iCloud records for mm, it was I it was a little more than a year, I think, after he was shot. I think it was like maybe September 2020. So, I mean, it was after the kids' remains were found. They ordered the iCloud records on his phone. They had his phone, but they didn't order. No, they didn't even do I don't think they even did the dump of his phone. Yeah, because there's a record of like, his phone was dead, and they had to charge it, and take all of these steps. But I'm pretty sure they didn't even do a dump of the phone until more than a year after he was murdered. Emily. It is kind of funny. She said, "I'd love to know half of your computer skills." It is kind of almost eerie about how like so many things in my career, and I'm not saying this to like add undue weight to whatever this thing is I do in this case, but there are a number of things in my career that did kind of prepare me for this. But yeah, Crocheting Bammy asked, are there any consequences that can happen to all the authorities that failed the victims of these monsters? Yeah, I mean, an unlawful death lawsuit by Kay, possibly. But she was very supportive of Detective Moffat. I've mentioned really the only one I saw who pushed back against Detective Moffat was Cheryl, uh, Charles' ex-wife. So um, yeah, I don't know if there are no indicators that anyone will do that. I mean, I've like when I was tweeting before, I started being harassed. Excuse me, when I was tweeting about this, I would like um, tag the Attorney General for Arizona, who's like, I mean, I was spitting into the wind, but I was just like, this is crazy. This is really, really crazy. Like these departments need to be, investigated or at minimum offered some training. Like, I mean, because there were just so many levels of failure. It really going back to Gilbert, and just the way that they, like aided Lori in avoiding this mandatory pickup. And it wasn't mandatory at first, but then it did become mandatory like the next day. And this one detective or officer, I don't know if he was a detective, but he was giving her multiple tips on how to avoid it, to the point of saying, and if they come to your door, which they probably won't, as long as there's a barrier between you and the police officer. In other words, keep the door mostly closed, because he made the point, I think twice, that they don't kick indoors for these pickups. And he also said, this was the older officer, so there was a rookie officer in there too, and he also said like something to the effect of like, you don't seem crazy to me, you got your kids to school on time, which it wasn't kids, it was one kid, but like, what are you doing? How are you dispensing, like, an evaluation just off the cuff? And yeah, so he also told her like, well, the pickup order is with our lieutenant, but while she's looking at it, if you're not here, and she was Lori, that was just lost on her, she so he was hinting at her like, if you're not here, then like they can't pick you up. I mean, that's essentially what he was hinting at. And so yeah, so there were just multiple levels of failure, and there were so many people who could have stopped this. I mean, at least at Joe's death, and then even after Charles was murdered, there were so many people who could have stopped it there. And you just see like I can't even imagine when we actually get to these trials, because even just reading through the documents that have been released, it just looks like everyone just took a big step back, where like when they should have been like pressing in, leaning in, it's just like everyone took a big step back and just let these psychopaths have their way with the rest of the victims. Okay, Sin D asked, how much do you think Tylee knew about the delusions at the police station at the time Charles obtained the commitment order, because Tylee was siding with Lori? I think at that point, I mean, it's really hard to say. I do try to look at this as dispassionately as possible. I do think that I don't think, I mean, there were indicators that there was tremendous tension between Charles and Tylee. I also suspect that Tylee held quite a bit of resentment toward Charles, and most likely also Lori, for how they financially profited from Joe's death. So according to Adam, not that he's necessarily the most reliable person, in my opinion, he did say in his interview that Tylee got $2,000 and from the life insurance payout. But I know that the life insurance was for $80,000, and so Lori and Charles would have gotten a little more than 60,000 of that, and so that was quite a bit of money. And then Charles had also eventually said that like Tylee would need to make the payment on the Jeep if she wanted to keep the Jeep, that she needed to pay for the Jeep, and Colby needed to start making the payments on for his car and the insurance. So, and that was right before he was murdered. But there's no question there was a lot of tension. And then when Charles and Lori had their falling out, Charles was sending text messages to multiple family members. Tylee, we know Zach Cox, because of Charles talking about it in the body cam footage, and well, we know also Brandon and eventually Adam. So I think Charles was just trying to get as many people's attention as possible, and he also there's a record in the FOIA docs of him going to Summer's house because he was trying to find Lori. There was also a reference of when Tylee was staying at Alex's, Charles came by, and both Alex and Summer talked about this shouting match between them. And interestingly, Summer said when she was interviewed that she took video of it. So there is video of Charles and Tylee's shouting match, and it'll be interesting to see if that comes out in any of these trials. So yes, I do think that Tylee sided with her mom, and so did Colby, and initially it appears so did Zach Cox, possibly. There are some indicators that he excuse me, possibly moved Charles' car from the airport. So there were 3 different people who were accused of moving the car. April Raymond said Lori went with a friend. Melanie Gibbs said that Alex moved it, and Summer and Colby said that Zach Cox moved it. So, but anyway, so yeah, so I think the family was pretty and this is a Cox family tradition. When someone marries into the family and then that marriage, breaks apart, the Cox family, they circle the wagons, they take care of their own. And so yeah, I think, and Lori is also very, very good at playing the victim, and Charles did threaten her in some of these text messages. So as despicable as I find Summer's involvement in this, especially, kind of vis-a-vis like her distancing of it afterwards, when she told law enforcement that Charles had threatened her, and I think she referenced something specific, like, something about turning his back, or Lori, like not turning her back, or I forget what it was, but when I read through their text message exchanges, he did say that. And so, I mean, I am not judging Charles in any way. His world was falling apart around him. And anyone who's been in a situation like that, it's not just difficult, it is nearly impossible to kind of stay dispassionate and not strike back. But anyway, but with some of those things, that I think that really helped Lori to secure more enthusiastic support from family members, that she could say she really was in danger. So, yeah. Okay, I'll take one more question and then I am going to head in. Jerry Stepp asked, are you getting updates from prosecutors from the sealed documents? I don't know if you're referring to the FOIA docs, but all of the information that I'm getting is from these FOIA docs. I am absolutely not getting any information from prosecutors, anything that they've shared with me, which is very, very little, and they only share information that, I think exclusively that they would feel comfortable having shared. And even then, I'm still really cautious. And I only say that because I know when Rob Wood told me how many thousands of pages, I think it was tens of thousands of pages, he actually, of like evidence they have now, he actually stopped himself and he was like, no, this would be okay to share. So yeah, no, all of this information, this unredacted document, this did not and I would have disclosed that, but this did not come from any kind of clandestine handoff. It's all in the police report. So, okay, on that note, thank you for joining us for another live, and have a great weekend. Bye.